Why are so many people blaming Pirelli? What is happening between Renault versus Racing Point? Do Ferrari have new updates for this weekend in Silverstone? Can anybody challenge Mercedes? And is Lewis Hamilton the greatest Formula One driver ever? We'll answer this and more. Welcome to the F1 PitBox. Gary Formato, looking rugged there, my friend. Are you good?
I'm good, thank you very much.
Listen, before we talk Formula One, Gary, sure, I'm so excited for you and the GTC company this weekend, going racing at Zwartkops, albeit without any crowds. The GTC Super Cup taking to the track in Zwartkops, very exciting. And what a lineup of drivers!
Look, it's an exciting class that we've introduced to this year, so big thanks to Volkswagen for, taking the plunge and building the first 10 cars for GDC2, which is now GDC Super Cup. I think just a great sort of entry point into GDC, a step up from anything else in the country. And I think just the fit is perfect. So we're going to give this weekend a rollout with those cars only. No GDC cars will be on the grid this weekend, unfortunately. But we will be back in action soon, I'm sure. In fact, I think two of the cars are actually racing the GDC, both the Golf GTI and the Toyota Corolla are going to be racing in the SA Endurance Series in PE next weekend. So everybody's sort of doing their thing and finding their way through this whole, COVID situation that we've had. But yeah, this weekend I think a lot of the guys are just excited to be out there racing. So yes, we know there's not going to be crowds, and it's going to be a much quieter day than we used to. But I think these guys are just ready to go in these brand new cars. They've been looking at them for months. And, you can imagine, it's like looking at toys under the Christmas tree and not being able to open them. So the guys are just excited to be out there this weekend.
I must say, when we're a couple of weeks back, you sent me the pictures of these cars. They look just stunning. I mean, we got the current GTC2 champion, Brad Liebenberg, is going to be there. So he's going to be fighting to defend his championship. But Gary, you've got some interesting drivers that have come on. The sim racer, Jonathan Machotzi, is going to be there. Then Sean Dermody returns to GTC Super Cup racing. And then Andre Bezuidenhout, Saul Hack. I mean, this is just wonderful.
Yeah, we've got some great drivers. Jeffrey Kruger as well, I think, is
yes.
Also a fantastic driver. It's really, and these are the guys, especially these younger guys, the quicker guys, Jeffrey Kruger, Brad Liebenberg. I mean, these are future GDC drivers, So it's imperative that we grow this class and start bringing in people that can go into GDC, and of course, keep GDC on the track that it's on with new cars and new things happening here, to give these guys a chance in the future. We've got Daniel Rowe, we've got Keegan Masters, Mandam Dekani now in Toyota this year, Robbie Volk. There's quick drivers out there. So we'd like to see these guys, coming into GDC, which now I think is becoming a very real possibility. It's certainly a better sort of incubator, if you like, than we had before with GDC2, with really a production-based car where this car sort of moves a little bit more away from that to more of a racing car, which is what GDC is in its totality. So as I said, I think the step now makes a lot of sense, and let's see. There's something on the line now. So this progression that is taken shape quite nicely now.
Yeah, I tell you, I'm very, very excited for this weekend and the drivers as well. Gary, yes, there are not going to be any crowds over there, but together with race day, TV. What can people stream? What is going to be available? What are we going to do for GTC Super Cup this weekend?
Well, we're going to be streaming along with yourself this weekend. We're going to be there streaming live a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. So there's going to be a camera going to be going, hearing about the new cars, just understanding what these cars are exactly, speaking to the drivers, getting their feedback. And I think it's sort of a first in terms of that in South Africa. The streaming thing, I think in the last couple of months, with the way things have just happened, it's become certainly a very, very good option. And we're looking forward to giving it a full go this weekend with Race Day and yourself. And, looking forward to the feedback that we get and just understand just how we are. Because I think everybody understands that it's going to happen at some stage. But right now, while things are changing, it's good to now sort of get involved and just see what the results are going to be. So we're pretty excited about that. So tune into Race Day TV. I think there'll be sharing it across all the platforms, the GTC platform, hopefully yours as well if we can. And let's see what we can do this weekend. So it'll be new for all of us, but giving people at least live action and certainly feedback from the track as it's happening throughout the day. So you won't be able to be there, but you'll definitely be able to catch us live.
Yeah, I must say I'm really looking forward just to get my feet onto a racetrack again. Yeah, I'm very, very excited. All right, let's turn our attention to the world of Formula One. We had Silverstone Part 1 last weekend, and I wrote my blog on Monday. I found it a very peculiar race for a whole lot of different reasons. And I suppose the big talking point, of course, was the Pirelli tyre failures. And Gary, yet again, it's incredible how people just come out and sit there and blast the tyre manufacturer, Pirelli. Oh, the tyres are rubbish, the tyres are this, the tyres are that. I completely found that just really sad from a point of view. But let's start off with how dangerous it is driving a race car around a track and all of a sudden you have a tyre failure.
Look, of course, it happens at the wrong place. The car's you're going to go into the wall. I mean, it's as simple as that. But when you're pushing it to the absolute limit on the tires, like they were after the pit stop that came early in the race, which you could quite understand, and they were on the absolute limits. I think for me, apart from it being dangerous, it's racing. And we've had situations before where you've had a tire that's been too good for the track. And everybody's going, oh, well, now there's no race because the tire is just too good. Nothing's happening. And at the end of the day, these guys, it shows you once again that the tires were on the absolute limit. I think the big thing for me was that I would have thought that Mercedes-Benz had a little more pace in hand to look after the tire better and not have to push the tire to the absolute point where it was pushed to. And that was quite surprising for me to see both of them lose the tire right at the end there. So you would have expected that from teams that maybe didn't have cars that handled as well. But, it shows you that the cars were being pushed and the tires were being used to the absolute maximum.
Yeah, it's such a good point because I wrote my blog before any of the data came out from Pirelli, and I said the onus has got to be also very much on the team. I mean, Pirelli come out and say to you, listen, this tire should last for 40 laps. It could last for 35. It could last for 50. It's somewhere within those parameters. Gary, it's very much up to the team also to take the onus upon themselves for the responsibility, especially on a very high-speed track like it is, massive loads onto the tires through various corners. So I find that the complaints about the Pirelli tire to be unwarranted. And I'm so glad that they've come out and said, sorry, this weekend we're going to the prescribed tire that we originally had set out for this weekend, which is going to be the softer compound, which means, without a doubt, we're going to have a minimum of 2 pit stops. And I think that makes for better racing.
Yeah, it certainly does. Absolutely. Pit stops, it adds another element. And also, you're going to see people wearing a tire out a lot quicker. It's never that what you've got to understand as well. And no track is ever the same either. Yes, they know Silverstone, they've got data, but the surface it's a year older than it was last year. It weathers in, things change on these circuits. So it's never that you just know exactly what you're going to get on any given day when you go back to a circuit after not being there for a while or whatever it may be. And the same with just in racing in general. It's not something that's just set. It's fluid. There's weather conditions. There's so many things that come into that make a difference. So it's not like it's an easy deal, So you've got to understand that the engineers, the drivers themselves, are all trying to manage different things all the time and get these cars to the end of the race as quick as possible. And if you'd said to me, well, the tire's going to last 40 laps and you're a chance of winning the Grand Prix, of course you're going to go for it. I mean, it's a no-brainer. Everybody did.
Yeah.
It's just how it is. So yes, bring a different tire, softer tire. You're going to use it quicker. But then again, safety cars, all these sort of things happen. You don't know. It's not an exact science.
Yeah, exactly. There we go. Listen, there's the picture of Danny Kvyat. So, I mean, we had the tyre failures, Gary, of Carlos Sainz, Valtteri Bottas, and Lewis Hamilton, which seems just to be an element of wear and pushing it to the end. Danny Kvyat, I mean, you got to feel for him in a way. He crashed the car. He sat there. He said, "So sorry, guys." It's come out, and you could see that there was definitely some kind of issue with with the car, and the right rear deflated, and that was hitting the curbs excessively. And here comes the point. Silverstone now have gone and adjusted those curves so that they're not as hectic as they were. And I sit and say, well, maybe you shouldn't be driving on those curves.
Well, it's like Austria. Remember a couple of years ago, we had all those suspension failures in Austria. The guys hit the curbs. These track builders also building tracks to what they believe is right. They're not also just done. There is certainly a lot of engineering that goes into that, but sometimes it doesn't. It's not perfect. So, it's up to the drivers as well to stay with them, but sometimes, it is difficult. So you don't want to have curves that make life, excessively difficult for everybody, and brake cars and brake tires, and put you in a position like Kvyat was, where he had no chance. The thing turned the opposite direction to the corner, and he was off into which in quite a peculiar place as well. We haven't seen that kind of thing in modern F1 for a long time, certainly through that corner there, or that complex of corners. So it's if there is something really wrong with the curbs, I do sort of agree that the curbs should be changed, because it's sort of an unnecessary situation that the drivers have got to deal with on top of everything else. So I'm kind of with them on that one in terms of fixing up the curb. Although you should theoretically stay off it, but if it was too aggressive, it's not a big deal to get it to a point where it's not going to do the kind of damage that it did.
Yeah, well, the good news is that Silverstone have adjusted the curbs for this weekend as well, which is going to be the 70th year of celebrating Formula One. We'll talk about that a little bit later. We've also got Lewis Hamilton that we're going to chat about as well. But the next point is Racing Point versus Renault. We spoke about it last week, Gary, after the Silverstone Grand Prix. Renault, of course, again went and protested the Racing Point brake ducts. Apparently, Ferrari have also stepped in and asked questions about the legality or the definition of what copying is to be in the world of Formula One. Now, we're only going to find out the verdict, Gary, because apparently the steward sat yesterday. We're only going to find out the verdict tomorrow before pre-practice one as to what has come out. And I was trying to sit there and think about this. Imagine if you now, as you own the team, Gary, and an hour before your first free practice, they sit there and say, "Oh, Gary, by the way, your brake ducts are illegal." There's no ways that you are going to have the time to all of a sudden change those brake ducts to what they were before, and then get the suspension geometry all set up. So you've got to believe, well, I've got to believe, that the ruling will go in favor with Racing Point tomorrow.
Yes, and you're quite right in terms of the timing involved. And also, there was no before, because this is a brand new car, and this is what they've got. So they can't now go and stamp on last year's parts and now expect to work with everything else. As you know, everything is intrinsic in these cars. It would be, you've got to believe, very difficult for them to do this. So you can't see that happening. I totally agree with you. And there's also a safety element attached to that as well. I mean, how can you now say to somebody, well, you've got a car working, it's the brake ducts, which is crucial on the car, as we all know, and now just go and change it? I don't think it's going to happen. So yes, I do think that we'll see them racing, certainly as they are for this weekend, depending on what the verdict is. But there's got to be sort of some time frame, given to the thing, if in fact that they are found illegal. I still don't believe they're going to be found illegal, but let's see what comes out.
Yeah, I think the major point about this whole Renault versus Racing Point, and McLaren have echoed their sentiments about it as well, as I mentioned, Ferrari have stepped in as well, is I think it will go to the World Motorsport Council, because whichever team loses tomorrow is definitely going to appeal it. And I think it's not going to be just about the racing ducts, Gary. It's going to be about what is allowed in terms of copying the car. And we spoke about it last week as well. But, if there is some form of clarity where these independent teams, the Alfa Romeos of the world, the Racing Points, which is going to be Aston Martin, etc., those teams at least will be able to sit there and say, well, sure, with budget caps coming in, etc., and if I buy this part from Mercedes or Renault or Ferrari, then I'm also saving a huge cost without infringing upon the rules as well. So it's a good and a bad thing, but just give us clarity.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're spot on with that. It's all about being clear and everybody understanding just what they can and can't do. And as you said last week, everyone's going to push everything to the absolute limit. There's no doubt about that. But I think as I said, my view may be different to everybody else's, but if there's a possibility for some of the smaller teams to gain an advantage or to gain some performance by working with one of the other top teams, I don't see the problem with it. I think it saves a lot of money, as you said, and it gets more cars into the race, and it's been great seeing the cars where they are. And in fact, Sebastian Vettel wouldn't be talking seriously to them about driving for them next year had the car not been performing like it is. So it's done a lot of good things as well, and I really hope that everything is in order and that we can go forward, and as you said, with a clearer indication or picture of what we need to do, and we may see it start happening a little bit more, across the board, because of the fact that also we've got these budget caps and big changes happening next year as well.
Okay, now listen, if you're posting comments, of course we will get to them during maybe later on in the show, but I honestly don't have the dexterity to be able to sit there and watch all of these different screens. But post comments and any kinds of questions, and Gary and I, of course, will try and answer them for you. Okay, now let's get on to something which is I think it's hurting a lot of people. I'm wearing my red jacket in solidarity for the event industry in South Africa and across the world, to light South Africa red, because it's an industry which has just been decimated by COVID-19, and it affects any form of events. For example, we're going racing at Swartkorps this weekend, and you would have so many different promotional items that would take place for the different crowds or whatever, and those things unfortunately don't happen. So we are all holding together for that. But I'm also wearing a Ferrari jacket because someone's got to support them somewhere along the line. Now, Gary, in the world of Formula One, we don't have a lot of testing, but the teams are allowed what they call promotional days, where they are entitled to go and drive their cars and take photos and make adverts, etc., etc. And they're limited the amount of mileage that they are to do. And yesterday at Silverstone, Ferrari took up that option and decided to do a promotional day, and came with a very interesting new front wing. And I think Fritz is going to show us the wing. This is the wing, Gary, that Sebastian Vettel tried to use on Sunday last week. We'll talk about him in a short while. And let's get the new wing. There we go. You can see it's vastly different to what Ferrari used over the weekend. Ferrari, of course, have come out, Gary, and have said that until 2022, they really are going to struggle. They have to use this car next year as well. But there are a lot of brains there at Ferrari, and they've got to try and do something to improve the performance of that car. This looks like an interesting adaptation to perhaps reduce the drag on the car. Can we say that there is a glimmer of hope for Ferrari to improve and become the third best team on the grid?
You're going to be doing whatever they can to improve the car. The big question is, how does it affect everything else? It may be a gain in a certain area, but it may need some fine tuning or some development in another area to get the absolute maximum benefit out of the new wing. I'm just sort of throwing things out there. So let's see. Yeah, if it works, yes, the car should be better. Will it be good enough to get ahead of, to start racing with Red Bull, for that matter? I don't think they're going to race with Mercedes-Benz, but let's see. But it's for them to be thrown in this position and have this issue with the front wing is quite peculiar. It's not kind of what you'd expect from someone like Ferrari at this point in time. But not everybody gets the maths right all the time, and I certainly hope that is a lot better. Any race with Ferrari, not really in it, is not good for Formula One in general. Everybody wants to see the front between these big teams. So let's hope that it makes a difference for them. But when you're rushing things like this, you need a bit of luck to get it, get all the maths spot on. So we'll see.
Well, speaking of a little bit of luck, you've got to say Charles Leclerc's performance in that Ferrari this past weekend was outstanding compared to Sebastian Vettel's. And I'm going to discuss a little bit about how difficult it is to race at Silverstone. But Charles Leclerc is really stepping up. We know that Vettel is going to leave, and we know he's a consummate professional and will give 100% for the rest of his time at Ferrari. But Charles Leclerc really impressed over this past weekend with a superb drive. Yes, he may have been a little bit fortunate to get the podium, but you mentioned it. Sometimes you do need a little bit of luck. But his pace was rather extraordinary for a car that looked pretty hopeless throughout the course of the weekend.
Look, he's been charging hard all year, and sort of settling into that position of his now. And I think it's safe to say that he's the team leader at this point in time. They're going to be throwing everything at him. They know Vettel's on the way out. It was always going to be a tough ride for him. But Leclerc has done a fantastic job, and really, I think, risen to the occasion, as you said, in a very difficult car. Now, it certainly bodes well. I don't think the car is going to be bad forever. And we can understand why they're confident in going and fighting for the championship with Leclerc going forward.
There was one comment from Martin Brundle that he made during the commentary, and he spoke about one of the Haas cars and saying, this is, I think it was during qualifying, and saying, this is a Haas car that at the moment is 2 seconds off the pace. And he said, if I was driving this car, this would be the best Formula One car that I would ever have driven, which just gives you an idea of the complexities of these cars. If I look at Silverstone, Gary, these Formula One cars, and this is what we love about Formula One, because it just pushes the envelope and it just makes them better and better. And year by year, we go, the circuits actually can't handle the brilliance of these cars. Silverstone was one of those circuits that there used to be a lot more overtaking. Because there were different braking zones. These cars, Gary, are now going through parts of that circuit where they used to brake. They're going flat out through it. And when I looked at Sebastian Vettel's pace, I sat there and went, why can this Ferrari not do anything? And I came back and I looked at Romain Grosjean, where everyone pitted and went onto the hard compound tire. Grosjean sat there and said, well, I'm not going to pit. I'm going to stay on the medium compound tire. And it took ages for anybody to get close and even pass him, which just shows that comparing someone's performance like a Sebastian Vettel to a Charles Leclerc might not be as justified as we think.
Look, as you said, corners that you're going flat out through require massive amounts of downforce, and they are very, very quick corners, obviously, by virtue of the fact that you can go flat out through some of these corners. Getting close enough is the difficulty. You need all that aero onto your car to be able to do and to carry that speed to the corner, and you're stuck behind people or get to within a certain distance where it starts disrupting your airflow. You can't get up the corner close enough to make the pass down that straight, and that's obviously the issue with Silverstone right now. And it's the age-old thing with Formula One. We've always said, you kind of wish that you could race with no downforce and have this sort of like Formula 4 battling, but it's just not the case. It's Formula One, and this is where where the art of it is. A lot of it is anyway in the aerodynamics. So unfortunately, it's just what it is. And I don't know what you're going to do to make tracks be able to encourage this kind of racing. But this is also what makes these cars great, is this amount of speed these cars can actually carry through the corners.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually fascinating to watch when you just sit there and understand the complexities of a Formula One car. We mentioned a couple of weeks ago, it had been touted around that Mercedes are keeping Lewis Hamilton that is not confirmed at this stage, but without a doubt it's going to happen. And Valtteri Bottas was going to stay with Mercedes as well. Today, officially, it's been confirmed that Valtteri Bottas is staying with Mercedes-Benz for 2021. Can anybody challenge Mercedes? That is my question. I was sitting thinking back to 1988, the McLaren domination. I mean, they won 15 out of 16 races. And then in Schumacher, 2002 and 2004, how dominant they were. Gary, I have a feeling that this season, 2020, in its peculiarity as it is, could well be the most dominant season by a team, and that would be Mercedes, ever in the history of Formula One. I do not, unless there's some really strange incident that happens on a Grand Prix weekend, I do not see anybody getting close to them.
No, the car's good, and we had an idea before the season started, and you're kind of always hoping that it won't be the case, and there's going to be a spike for the front of the championship. But yes, no, the car's just unbelievably quick. Yeah, they had the tyre failure this weekend, but I mean it was something else. But the car in general is just so good. The team is so good, and both the drivers are actually going very well. To be honest with you, yes, Hamilton's Hamilton, but Bottas is not doing a crummy job by any stretch of the imagination. You can quite understand why they've kept him on in the team. I agree. It just may be one of the most dominant seasons out, and also because you don't have the time to develop and to do things like you would normally have in a normal season. You don't have any summer break anymore, or whatever it is that you need to be able to, in some time, to be able to get the cars going better if you're the opposition to Mercedes-Benz, or competing against Mercedes-Benz, should I probably say at this stage. So yes, I do think that these guys are going to really have it their own way for the year. And well, it is what it is. It happened before. It's probably going to happen now. But again, you never know. The Red Bull for me has been probably a disappointment. And if they can get that car to work a lot better and get going, they may have a chance of fighting with Mercedes-Benz for a couple of races. I don't believe they're just going to turn on and go. But there's going to be certain conditions and tracks that may, and themselves in terms of getting their car better, that will allow them to be able to compete with Mercedes on occasion, perhaps.
Yeah, perhaps. We've got a graphic just of the driver standings. I'm just going to see if Fritz can. Yeah, there we go. I mean, a 30-point lead already at this stage. Gary, Lewis Hamilton coming out and saying this is not the way that I wanted the championship to be, and I think he's trying to be graceful about it. He knows that he really. With Bottas, losing out massive points this past weekend, Lewis is going to have a failure in one or two races in order for anybody to be up there. But that just shows the dominance. But there's the next graphic is the one that is quite worrying, I think, for everybody else. This is what people are speculating. We don't know how realistic it is. But if you look at that, I mean, there's 42 horsepower between Ferrari and Mercedes, and there's 30 odd horsepower between Honda and Mercedes as well. Gerhard Berger, who's the big boss of DTM, says Ferrari need to find about 60 horsepower. Just that power on its own, Gary, and we saw Ferrari when they had better horsepower last year, makes a significant difference. And if Honda, Renault and Ferrari can't even get close to those numbers, regardless of what their cars look like, they don't have a chance.
No, that's right. And particularly at a circuit like this, so for this weekend. And that extra power just allows you to do so much more. It just allows you to set up the car so much better. It's just, it's just so important. And it's a big difference. That's a huge issue if you don't have a Mercedes-Benz engine. And I think the figures are pretty correct, because there is equipment that these teams have available to them that are able to almost hear and work from the sounds of other cars, just how much power they've got. So I think those numbers are pretty spot on. I think the scary thing is just how much extra do they have in hand as well. Should somebody else catch up, can they give themselves more power? So look, no doubt they're doing the best job out there in the engine department, and in Mercedes-Benz's case, the chassis department, driver department. They've just got it all together.
Okay, final point on Mercedes. I think it's been a little bit too overhyped, but it was still magnificent the way that Lewis Hamilton controlled his car in the last third of the lap to get around Silverstone and not allow Max Verstappen to catch him. Gary, 230 kilometers down the I forget the name, the back straight on three wheels, eventually finished 6 seconds ahead of everybody else. Personally, I think it's been a little bit too overhyped, but he still had to control the car and get it to the end. Fortunately, that tire did not delaminate and destroy itself. But it just shows you the pure focus of this guy as well, to get that car to the end and over the finish line in first place.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, at that point in the race, you're stuck with no option but to push. If it was early on in the race, you'd probably go back to the pits a little bit slower in order not to damage the car, and make sure that you can carry the Grand Prix. But it's the last lap of the Grand Prix, the thing's dragging itself on the floor. You're going to give it a go, and make sure that you get there. As you said, 6 seconds is it's a lot in racing, but that could go away very quick. And had it been a longer lap that he needed to do, it may well have not ended like it did for him. But listen, these guys know what they're doing. I also think it's a little bit overhyped. You could see what was going on. What was the worst that's going to happen? You're going to go off and crash the car. and I don't think it would have been too bad. But he had to do what he had to do to go win that Grand Prix. But I would think that there's possibly, even if you asked him, better races and in more difficult situations in, for example, a wet track like we had in Austria when he qualified, for example, would probably be a little bit more difficult than what he did on Sunday.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, listen, had his tyres started deflating at the same point that Valtteri Bottas's did, Max clearly would have won the race. But enough on that. Listen, a couple of other points. We're going to talk about Lewis Hamilton in a short while, but a couple of points from this past weekend. Desperately unlucky for Nico Hülkenberg. Gets flown in, gets there, doesn't have a great qualifying, but wasn't far off Lance Stroll. And then all of a sudden, doesn't start the race. And it looks like on top of that Sergio Perez, just waiting for a COVID test. He says he's fully recovered. If it proves negative, Perez will be in the car tomorrow and not Nico Hülkenberg. So it just desperately sad for the German.
You know what? Hülkenberg hasn't had the best luck throughout his career. You know, some of the things have been his fault. And this weekend was no difference. It wasn't his fault, but what could you do? You know, I think he did a great job just getting in the car and giving it a go. There certainly must have been an element of his fitness that wasn't totally up to scratch. We spoke about the cornering speeds at Silverstone, the amount of Gs that they were putting. I think it was 5.8 Gs was the most. I can't remember what the highest G I saw for the weekend was, but exceptionally high. So I think just to get in and give it a go like that was pretty good. So I was also keen to see him, you know, get into the race and see what he could do there. Just an opportunity to just remind people that he's still out there, and I still believe a great driver. You know, so it was unfortunate for him, just bad luck, and it unfortunately seems to keep on dogging him.
I know, very, very strange. And he got some wonderful endorsements from the likes of Hamilton, Verstappen, and quite a few other drivers saying that he should be on the grid. So, you know, you never know in the world of Formula One. Gary, the one peculiar element I did find this past weekend, regardless of the fact that Hülkenberg didn't even start, was Racing Point's performance and pace during the course of the race. Now, a little conspiratorial in a way. They knew that this week there was going to be the inquiry heard by the stewards about their racing ducts and whether it was giving performance advantage and copying, etc., etc. But we expected, well, I certainly expected Racing Point to be right up there, most probably challenging the likes of Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. It didn't materialize at all. And are we maybe overhyping Racing Point? Are we expecting too much from them? Or perhaps they detuned it a little bit so that they didn't get caught out?
Maybe they changed them already to the ones that they're supposed to have had on in the first place. Who knows? But yeah, I think you also needed Perez in the race. I think that was the big thing.
Yes.
I think you know without Perez, there, it's very difficult to get a full understanding of perhaps where that car may well have been or should have been, or however you want to call it. So it's pretty inconclusive, I think, at this point in time. As I said, if Perez is back this weekend, it's great. I think it'll give us a very, very good indication of just where they are with the performance of that car. But you know, who knows? You know, we've seen things happen in Formula One before, which you know are a little bit dubious. You know, situations are taken care of, and I wouldn't say that it doesn't happen. So it's entirely possible that they did something or just like something to go away.
Yeah, something like that. Got to say, wow, you know, everything's about Racing Point versus Renault. Renault stepped up to the plate on a circuit that shouldn't theoretically suit them that well. Brilliant drive from Danny Ricciardo. And I've got to say, kudos to Esteban Ocon. Give this guy a little bit of clean road and driving or whatever. Those two Renaults were fantastic. And I mean, a brilliant performance from them and a great result as well.
Yeah, good to see Renault out there. And, you know, my fear with Renault is that the reason why you want to see them performing and at least doing a decent job is that, you know, you're sort of concerned that if they don't get it right, you know, how long will the company keep on supporting the Formula One program? And you need a team like Renault in Formula One. There's no two ways about it. So, you know, from that point of view, I'm always keen to see a team like that get going and do what they're doing. There's a lot of expectation. You can only imagine how difficult the Monday morning meetings are at a corporate level regarding the Sunday's performance. So it certainly helps that team to have had a good weekend. And listen, they want to win races. I mean, Fernando Alonso coming back next year, it's a big deal for them. they're certainly not finished. But you've got to achieve enough to keep the enthusiasm going for the project. It's not a cheap exercise.
Yeah, 100%. I'm glad to see Renault up there as well. Hopefully, also, just see them hopefully in due course to adding more development there as well. Lando Norris just seems to be like the poster boy for Formula One as well. He's just, he's got that mischievous kind of face. He just loves racing. He does a fantastic job. Yes, his teammate Sainz had the tire issue, but he just keeps his nose clean and he keeps on going and as fast as he can. Is becoming a superstar in his own right, Gary.
He is, and he deserves to be as well. And I think a guy, just from the outside looking in, just the guy that's out there having a lot of fun with what he's doing, enjoying this job that he's doing. He's really quick, as we've spoken about. He races hard as well. I mean, this guy, he's the real deal for sure, And his profile is certainly growing all the time. It's great to see. I certainly enjoy watching the guy race and just his demeanor and just what he is to Formula One. Just doing a great job all round.
There he is, young Lando Norris. One thing that I haven't spoken about, and I really must bring it up. AlphaTauri, Kvyat, yes, we saw he had his issue, but Pierre Gasly, the guy got discarded from Red Bull, got back into AlphaTauri. I mean, he's obliterated Danny Kvyat. I mean, his overtaking on Sebastian Vettel was outstanding. And in my opinion, driver of the weekend. This guy is really, really good. And it just shows you how difficult it is to be a teammate of Max Verstappen.
Yes, exactly. And it's it was a tough time, and perhaps maybe they should have hung on a little bit longer with him and just got him to settle into the team. But listen, they made the change. They did what they got to do. But yeah, their program's generally been pretty good. Looking back even from Sebastian Vettel's days. I mean, they've had some Daniel Ricciardo, Vettel, Verstappen had some great drivers come through that what was then Toro Rosso. So you've sort of got to feel that they knew what they were doing. And Gasly performed well previously there. It just didn't work out at Red Bull. Right now, let's see what happens. I think it's good he's got the second chance, and he's making the most of it, showing people that he's still a force to be reckoned with in Formula One. Who knows exactly what the situation was at Red Bull when it didn't work out? I think one day, if Gasly's not at the team, we'll probably hear the real story. But he's certainly a good driver and settling well into Formula One now. He's done a lot of Grand Prix. The amount of Grand Prix. I was going to say, sorry, the amount of Grand Prix these guys do. He's done a whole span of Grand Prix. A lot of Grand Prix. So the guys do get a lot of experience quickly.
I know, it's incredible. I mean, I was sitting and reading stats on Max Verstappen. I think he's up to like 110 races already. I'm going, but you just got out of nappies. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's crazy. Yeah, anyway, exactly. Finally, Gary, Williams, Haas, Alfa Romeo. They're the three bottom teams at the moment. And let's take the 8 ball out of here, out of both of the teams. Mercedes, the most powerful engine. Ferrari, yes, struggling with their engine. But all three teams are really, really struggling. Williams, I'm the most concerned about, I'll be very honest, because they've got this massively powerful engine and they can't seem to do anything. Ferrari, Alfa Romeo and Haas, yes, they are struggling from the engine point of view, but it seems as though all three teams are so reliant on just getting the power side of things right. They're not focusing on anything else to improve the car.
Yeah, look, and the thing is, if you haven't got the power, the only way you're going to find any pace is to be able to get the car to go quick and around the corners, or braking or whatever it may be. But that's also just not an easy job to do. But it's just you've got to racing's about getting the package as close to perfect or as best as possible in all the areas. It's a package. And yes, you might have the greatest engine, but you've got a bum car, you've got a good car and a bum engine. That's just how it works. And you've got to try and put it all together. And that's why we see Mercedes-Benz do what they're doing. So you've got the opposite situation where they're taking everything and making it work. Other teams are not getting it all together, Williams included.
Yeah, unfortunately so. And I tell you, just from a strategy point of view, where Haas, I think, did a very, very good job with Romain Grosjean. Alfa Romeo were nowhere when it came to strategy with either Giovinazzi or with Raikkonen during the whole weekend, whether it was free practice sessions or whether it was qualifying or the race. They just, it's as though, everything sort of switched off. To them, COVID is just there, and they just got to try and get through it. So we have to wait and see. Gary, finally, let's talk about Lewis Hamilton, the esteemed Murray Walker, who I think is 95 years old this year and still going strong, came out with a couple of comments, and has, in a way, said that Lewis Hamilton is the greatest driver in Formula One. I'm just looking to the side because I've got something that I want to read to you. Murray Walker did qualify his comment by saying it's because of his driving fairness. He says, but he's also, in my opinion, and this is very contentious indeed, better than either Schumacher or Senna, because both of them, Schumacher and Senna, adopted various times in their career highly debatable driving tactics, like Schumacher stopping deliberately at Monaco to prevent Alonso getting pole position, Schumacher colliding with Villeneuve, Senna colliding with Prost in Japan. He says, Lewis Hamilton has never been anything like that. He's always driven as clean as a whistle. And went on further to sit there and say he's always regarded Fangio as the greatest driver. But soon he might have to say that it's Lewis Hamilton. It's one of those debates, Gary, no one's ever going to agree on any kind of thing. The one thing we can say is that Lewis Hamilton will become the most successful racing driver in terms of championships and points and wins, etc., pole positions at this stage. Who knows what will happen within 20 years? But it is an interesting debate as to try and determine who is the greatest of all time.
Look, Murray Walker, having been a racing person his entire life, I think it'd be hard to find anybody with the amount of passion that Murray Walker has had for motor racing. He's been around long enough to have seen all of those drivers as well. He's lived through the eras. I would say, I was around I was young when Senna arrived, and we saw Senna develop into what he did. The Schumacher era was very in everybody's face. It was really the age of TV became strong, and everybody knew Schumacher and what have you. And in every era, yes, there's a great driver. But you kind of have to agree with Murray Walker on this one, because there are certain instances where Hamilton's just got the job done. Yes, there's going to be the argument that yes, he's always had the best car, which he has had the best car. But at the end of the day, it's also part of being one of the best drivers out there is putting yourself in the right car at the right time. It's not just about being on the track. He does the stuff. He got it right off the track and choosing the right team. Moving from McLaren to Mercedes-Benz at that time, it's just worked well for him. He's played the game well, and that's what's made him into one of the greatest drivers of all time. So it would be difficult to fault Lewis Hamilton. There's no two ways about it. You can't say, well, yes, Schumacher crashed into Hill, he crashed into Villeneuve, he did things. Senna was, but they never really had the best car all the time. Sometimes they had to do what they had to do to get the job done. Hamilton has had a good car for a lot of the time, but he's made sure that he's had a good car, and that's the part that you've got to tip your hat to, because he's made the job. He's known what he's about. He's known how good he is, but he's also left nothing to chance and been at the right place at the right time.
I think very relevant comments there from Gary about how he's positioned himself over the years. And you look at drivers who've made wrong decisions. Jean Alesi, Fernando Alonso won two championships, and then from there it's just gone haywire. He could have been a multiple champion as well. When I listen to Murray Walker and listen to he says Fangio, and then of course Jim Clark's name comes up, Senna's name comes up, Schumacher's names come up, Hamilton's name comes up, justifiably. There's always one name, Gary, that I always just find very strange that doesn't come up, and that is Alain Prost. I think Alain Prost has got to be within that pool of, in my opinion, in the greatest drivers of all time. This guy raced against Piquet, Mansell, Senna, you name it. and he beat them, consistently. And I find it sad in a way that Prost's name is not included in these greats.
Time world champion. I mean, this first four world championships is nothing to be sneezed at. I mean, at the time, in his era, he beat Jackie Stewart's Grand Prix win tally. He went on to beat, get close to matching Fangio. And so, listen, there's no twist about it, but it's almost like he's driving on the track. It just, if you watch some of the older Grand Prix, when Prost won the Grand Prix or did what he did in Grand Prix, it was just quietly got on with it, played strategy, he knew what he was doing, and the next thing, Prost was in front of the Grand Prix. No sort of heroics, and having said that, and going back to what Murray Walker said, Prost also wasn't the kind of guy that you saw doing crazy things on the circuit and whatever. In fact, probably very, very cautious to say at best. We saw him not wanting to race in rain and do crazy things at all. Yes, without a doubt, one of the greatest out there. But you sort of get to the thing where it's each era has its name. Like you get the 60s with Jim Clark, you get the 50s with Fangio. Who was the 70s? I can't remember right now. But 80s, you had Prost and Senna in the 80s. Those are the two names. 90s was about Schumacher and Häkkinen. Basically, all you could really say about that. So 2000. So there's only a few names that stick out, and it's the guys that do it consistently as well. But I really do understand what Murray Walker's saying about Lewis Hamilton. For me, it goes back to his first Grand Prix and the first corner in Melbourne that year when he outbraked Fernando Alonso on the outside and got himself into a position where he was going to score that podium in his very first Grand Prix. You just don't see that kind of thing happen. And from that moment, you kind of knew that Lewis Hamilton had arrived. So first corner, first Grand Prix, he was there.
Yeah, unbelievable. The debate will go on for years and decades as to who the greatest driver is, and everyone's entitled to their own opinions. But it's just, it's wonderful to also just celebrate what we are going through right now in watching Formula One, with this magnificence of the team that he's in, but also of the extreme talent of someone like Lewis Hamilton. This weekend, Gary, we're back at Silverstone. It looks like the weather's going to be dry and warm. We've got different tyre compounds, so we're going to see a minimum of 2 pit stops. So most probably won't see the Mercedes lapping the whole field. But it is going to be another one where, who's going to fight for third?
More than likely, yes. I mean, that's probably going to be like that for the rest of the year, as we said just now. But let's see what happens. Let's see. Hopefully, Ferrari's upgrade works, and maybe it puts them in a position to race with Red Bull. That would be fantastic to see happening. But all that's going to do, from a championship point of view, is just going to allow the two Mercedes to run away, and it's actually going to hand Hamilton the championship on a plate. So that's what's going to happen if the car, in fact, performs. But let's see. We want to see some racing. Listen, nobody would have thought that those tyres were all going to let go in the last lap last weekend. Again, Formula One and motor racing threw up, through the cat amongst the pigeons. You thought it was a foregone conclusion. It wasn't at the end of the day. Who knows what's going to happen this weekend? As we always say, it's Formula One. That's why we watch. Anything can happen. And Silverstone is still a fantastic circuit. And I'll tell you what, enjoy watching the cars at this track, as we spoke about just now, to just understand what these cars and drivers are doing in these high-speed corners is phenomenal stuff. Yes, it may affect the racing, but these guys are doing something really incredible with these cars on a circuit like this.
Yeah, I couldn't endorse that anymore. And, as Murray Walker's always said, and I think it's the most famous quote in the world of Formula One, it's Formula One and anything can and usually happens. So we look forward to this weekend. Gary, I look forward to Saturday, GTC Super Cup at Swartkops. I'm so excited to be there and watch some racing together with you and your whole team. And, we'll bring some live stream via raceday.tv. To everybody as well. So I think it's going to be a great weekend, and well done for getting it off the road.
Yeah, great. And thanks for being part of it, Sasha. We appreciate it, and we look forward to working with you on this.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. There we go. That is the F1 PitBox for tonight. This weekend, it is the Silverstone Grand Prix. It is the 70th year, of Formula One since its existence. Of course, the first race back in 1950 at this circuit. Enjoy the racing. Free practice starts at 12 o'clock tomorrow. The race at 3 o'clock South African time on Sunday afternoon. Gary, I'll see you on the weekend, my friend. You look after yourself.
You too. See you on Saturday.
All right, to Fritz and Henk and the whole team at raceday.tv for putting this all together. And of course, for you two watching, please keep the comments coming. Also, share the video if you can. And we'll be chatting to you very, very soon. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Take care. Ciao, ciao.